Chatwam, 5 elements. That, that. Cha also. Ekatwe in 1 nescience. Ajuhut amalgamated. Munihi, the thoughtful. Sarvam, the sum total. Atmani, in the soul. You have it fixed. Brahmani, unto the spirit. Atmanam, the soul. Avyaye, unto the inexhaustible. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Laesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Yeah. Translation. Thus, annihilating the gross body of 5 elements into the 3 qualitative modes of material nature, he merged them in 1 nescience, and then absorbed that nescience in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. Srila Prabhupada's purport. All that is manifested in the material world is the product of the Mahatattva, Avyakta, and things that are visible in our material vision are nothing but combinations and permutations of such variegated material products. But the living entity is different from such material products. It is due to the living entity's forgetfulness of his eternal nature as eternal servitor of the Lord, and his false conception of being a so-called Lord of the material nature, that he is obliged to enter into the existence of false sense enjoyment. Thus, a concomitant generation of material energies is the principal cause of the mind's being materially affected. Thus, the gross body of the 5 elements is produced. Maharaj Yudhishthira reversed the action and merged the 5 elements of the body in the 3 modes of material nature. The qualitative distinction of the body as being good, bad, or mediocre is extinguished. And again, the qualitative manifestations become merged in the material energy, which is produced from a false sense of the pure living being. When one is thus inclined to become an associate of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, in one of the innumerable planets of the spiritual sky, especially in Goloka Vrindavan, one has to think always that he is different from the material energy. He has nothing to do with it, and he has to realize himself as a pure spirit, Brahman, qualitatively equal with the Supreme Brahman, Parameshwara. Maharaj Yudhishthira, after distributing his kingdom to Parikshit and Vajra, did not think himself emperor of the world or head of the Kuru dynasty. This sense of freedom from material relations, as well as freedom from the material engagement of the gross and subtle encirclement, makes one free to act as a servitor of the Lord, even though one is in the material world. This stage is called Jiva Mukta stage, or the liberated stage. Even in the material world, that is the process of ending material existence. One must not only think that he is Brahman, but must act like Brahman. One who only thinks himself Brahman is an impersonalist, and one who acts like Brahman is the pure devotee. Om Gyana Timiridasya Gyana Janashalakaya Chakshuram Litam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunastam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swaminiti Namini Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Ashritatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namini Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvise Sasunyavadi Pasachade Satarini Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namini Gaura Tvize Namaha Nityanando Vatutendur Vasuda Pranavalabha Janavir Jivita Patir Krishna Prema Prada Prabhu Padmavati Sutta Srimam Sachirananda Purvajaha Bhavom Mata Jagat Rakta Rakta Gora Kile Varaha Advaitam Harinadvaita Racharyam Bhakti Shamshanat Bhaktavataram Itam Sham Advaita Acharya Ashraye Panchatattvamakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankajanabaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanitraya Namaste Pankajagraye Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagadhitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopita Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Surato Pango Mama Matergatim Sarvaswa Padam Bhujo Radha Mandana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimad Radhagara Simhasanastau Srila Govinda Devo Prishyalibi Sevyamano Smarami Srimam Rasa Rasarambi Vam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venu Swanai Gopi Gopinata Sriyestunaha Taptakan Chana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Devi Krishnamai Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarva Lakshmi Mai Sarvam Kanti Samohini Paraha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation again. Thus annihilating the gross body of 5 elements into the 3 qualitative modes of material nature, he merged them in one nescience or niscience, and then absorbed that niscience in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam lagayete grim yat kripatamahan vande Shri Guru Dina Taranam Paramanam Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Akanda Mandalakaram Vyaptayina Characharam Tatpadam Dashitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So everyone is welcome to this SRIMAD Bhagavatam class today. And before we proceed to say something for our own purification and probably for the benefit of the audience, we seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis present in this assembly so that we may be able to represent Srila Vyasadeva properly. So, thus annihilating the gross body of 5 elements into the 3 qualitative modes of material nature, he merged them into one niscience, and then absorbed that niscience in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. So we are still discussing the timely retirement of the Pandavas. And in this sense, it means the disappearance of the Pandavas, the departure from the material world. So, Yudhishthira Maharaj is a perfect yogi. He is able to annihilate the gross body of 5 elements, and he is able to merge the elements of the body into niscience, which is the 3 qualitative modes of material nature, and he is able to merge that into Brahman. And in this way, Yudhishthira Maharaj become completely detached from the material atmosphere. So, the process of creation is a very complex chain of transformations from one level to the next level to the next level. The process of material creation begins with the glance of Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu is an expansion of Mahashankrishan of Vaikuntha Loka. And Mahashankrishan is an expansion of the quadruple expansions of Krishna or of Balaram. And Balaram is an expansion of Krishna. So for the purpose of material creation, Krishna himself does not get directly involved. Even Balaram does not directly get involved. The Chaturvyuha comes from Balaram, and there is Mahachaturvyuha, and from that Mahachaturvyuha we have Mahasankrishan. And from Mahasankrishan we have Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu is responsible for the material creation. And the material creation is initiated by the glance of Mahavishnu. The material energy, which is described as Bahiranga Shakti, is always present. It is not that it exists sometimes and does not exist at other times. The material energy of the Lord is a permanent energy of the Lord. But sometimes it is manifest and sometimes it is unmanifest. When it is not manifested, it is in a very subtle form. And in that subtle form, it may seem to be absent. In that subtle form, the three modes of material nature are in equilibrium. And so they do not act. So when creation is to be effected, Mahavishnu glances at that material energy called Maya. And that glance injects three things into that energy. That glance of Mahavishnu injects kala, time. It injects daiva, the destiny of the living entities. It injects swabhava, the nature of the living entities. These things are injected into pradhana. Pradhana is the subtle form of the material energy. When Lord Vishnu or Mahavishnu glances at this pradhana and injects these three items into pradhana, then it is transformed into Mahatattva. So from this Mahatattva, the time factor and the destiny of the living entities and the nature of the living entities begin to agitate the three modes of material nature, the three qualitative modes of material nature. At that level of transformation, the modes of goodness and the mode of passion is manifest, and they are predominant. Then, in the next level of transformation, the mode of ignorance, tamasa, becomes manifest. And then the principle of false ego, ahankara, is now manifested from these modes. Actually, it is said that the first impurity that manifests from the Mahatattva is ahankara, which comes from the mode of ignorance, tamasa. So this ahankara begin to combine with the three modes. When ahankara combines with the mode of goodness, jnana shakti is created. And jnana shakti is responsible for creating the mind and creating the devatas, the chief demigods that are responsible for directing the senses. Then when ahankar combines with the mode of passion, it creates kriya shakti. Kriya shakti is responsible for creating the intelligence and creating the 10 senses. The 10 senses working, 5 working senses and 5 knowledge acquiring senses. Sometimes it is also said it creates the prana, the 10 airs. Then when the ahankar combines with the mode of ignorance, it creates dravya shakti. Dravya shakti is responsible for manifesting the 5 gross elements and the 5 tanmatras. Tanmatras means the object of the senses, like sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. These are the object of this knowledge acquiring senses. They are called tanmatras. So they are produced by the dravya shakti, which is a combination of the ahankara, the false ego, and the mode of ignorance. So it is from this dravya shakti, the material elements, the gross elements of earth, water, fire, air, ether are created. And so Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that all that is manifested in the material world is the product of the Mahatattva Avyakta. And things that are visible in our material vision are nothing but combinations and permutations of such variegated material products. So all that we see before our eyes are simply a combination of these elements, the 5 gross elements and the 3 subtle elements, which Krishna described as his inferior energy in the Bhagavad Gita. So everything in this material world is actually created from the false ego, because the false ego combines with the mode of goodness to create the mind, to create Jnana Shakti, which creates the mind, and the Devatas. The false ego combining with the mode of passion creates Kriya Shakti, and that Kriya Shakti manifests the intelligence and the 10 senses, working senses and knowledge acquiring senses. And the false ego, in combination with the mode of ignorance, creates Dravya Shakti, and Dravya Shakti is responsible for manifesting the 5 gross elements and the 5 subtle elements, which are described as Tanmantras. So everything we see in this world is coming from the combination of the false ego and the 3 modes of material nature. So everything we see, our bodies, our houses, our cars, everything, the planets, the universe, everything we see is simply a combination of ahankar, or false ego, and the 3 modes of material nature. And that is why it is so difficult to deal with the false ego, because it is in everything we deal with. Everything, the false ego is there. In the earth, in the water, in the fire, in the air, in the sky, false ego is there, because they are all coming from Dravya Shakti, which is a combination of ahankar with tamasa, or the mode of ignorance. And so that sets the scene for material existence. Actually, it is also mentioned in the 3rd canto of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, how in the process of creation, or during the process of creation, Lord Brahma has to create five coverings, mirror of ignorance, 5 coverings, mirror of ignorance, to enhance the condition of the living entity, because the living entity wants to enjoy away from Krishna. The living entity wants to imitate Krishna. The living entity wants to equate himself with Krishna. Brahma facilitates that by providing the background for such activity, by creating the 5 layers of ignorance: Tamisra, Anda Tamisra, Moha, Mahamoha, and Tamas. Tamisra means the living entity's anger against the Supreme Lord, or his envy towards the Supreme Lord. Anda Tamisra means the seeing death as the ultimate end, that there is no life beyond death. And that is the atheistic point of view. Therefore, one must enjoy this body, because when it is finished, everything is finished. Then we have moha, illusion. Then we have mahamoha, attachment. And then tamasa, ignorance. So these are the 5 layers that Brahma first of all created. When Brahma started his creation, he first of all created these 5 layers of ignorance to facilitate the living entity's desire to forget Krishna. And so the becoming spiritual, taking to spiritual life, and actually transcending the body is not a very easy task. It's not at all easy because everything is affected by the false ego. And so at the time of death, it becomes even more difficult because the process of death is actually meant to reverse the whole creation process. And that is what is being described here. Thus, annihilating the gross body of 5 elements into the 3 qualitative modes of material nature, he merged them into one nations, and then absorbed that nations in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. So it is said that at each level of transformation, the Lord's energy in the form of time produces the subsequent state of transformation. So we see Maya becoming Pradana, Pradana becoming Mahatattva, Mahatattva manifesting the false ego, and then the false ego combining with the 3 modes. So different levels of transformation until we get to the level where the elements, the gross elements manifest. And from those gross elements, everything else in the universe was manifested. So when it is time to die, when it is time to leave, a yogi who is well practiced in his yoga process reverses the process. Yudhishthira Maharaj is a great yogi, he's a Mahayogi, being a great devotee of Krishna. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is able to reverse the whole process. It is also mentioned in the 1st canto, 13th chapter, how Dhritarashtra also followed the same process. Vigyanat mani samyogya kshetragye pravilapya tam brahmani atmani at dare gatam baram ivam bare. Dhritarashtra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with his intelligence and then merge it into the supreme being with knowledge of his qualitative oneness as a living entity with the supreme Brahman. Being freed from the blocked sky, he will have to rise to the spiritual sky. So those who are advanced in yoga, they can reverse the process by amalgamating the 5 elements into the 3 qualitative modes of material nature and amalgamating that into Brahman. And then they withdraw completely from the material environment. By the yogic process, when one is spiritually realized, one has to revert the original position of the amalgamating of the 5 gross elements and subtle elements and the mind and the intelligence into the Mahatattva. That is the process of death. For those who are ignorant and they do not practice any spiritual life, They do not engage in any form of spiritual cultivation. They just die like ordinary animals. But those who are on the path of transcendence, who understand that death means to reverse the process of creation, they consciously do that. And that is what Yudhishthira Maharaj is doing here. There is also a case study of Dadichi Muni in the 6th canto of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. Dadichi Muni was a very great, distinguished sage of great austerity and great charitability. When the demigods were harassed by Vritrasura, Vritrasura was vanquishing all the army of the demigods. Indra became frustrated. So they all ran to Lord Vishnu and placed their difficulty before Lord Vishnu. How their military was routed. Their army was being routed by Vritrasura single-handedly. And no weapon could kill Vritrasura. So Lord Vishnu advised that they should go to Dadichi Muni and beg for his bones. And if he would give them his bones, those bones could be manufactured into Vajra, the thunderbolt. And only that thunderbolt could kill Vritrasura. No other weapon could kill Vritrasura. So the demigods, they hurriedly went to see Dadichi Muni, the son of Atharva. And they begged him, that dear great sage, we are in trouble. We need to be freed from the onslaught of Vritrasura. Vritrasura has killed many of our soldiers, and there is every chance that he will rout all the military of the demigods. He's going to kill everybody. And so we have approached Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu has instructed or directed that we should come and see you. And if you will give us your bones, those bones could be used to manufacture the Vajra, the thunderbolt for Indra, and Indra will use it to kill Vritrasura. First, Dadichi Muni engaged the demigods in a lively discussion. He objected, why should you come to me for my bones? It means you people want me to die. If you ask for somebody's bones, it simply means the fellow should die. Don't you know how painful it is to die? Don't you know how difficult it is to ask for such a donation? Don't you know the difficulty in the giver's ability to give? So he challenged the demigods so seriously. And there was some dialogue, some religious discussion took place between the Dadichi Muni and the demigods. But eventually, Dadichi Muni relented. He agreed to donate his bones to the demigods by saying that whether he donated his body or not, the body will leave him one day. And that is the fact. Nobody can protect this body beyond its lifespan. Everybody has an expiring date. Just as we have our manufacturing date, which is our date of birth, there is also an expiring date. And when the time arrives, somehow or the other, some strange sickness will emerge that cannot be cured by all medical attempts, and that would take the life of the living entity. So Dadichi Muni said that no matter how much I protect this body, it will leave me one day. So if this body is going to benefit the demigods right now, why don't I do that? Anyone who can help others, who can benefit others with his body, with his wealth, with his resources, and he's not able to do it, he's doomed, because those very things will leave him at a certain time in life. But if you utilize them consciously in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the service of the devotees, that is glorious. So the Dadichi Muni agreed to give his body to the demigod. So it is mentioned, Ya takshashu mano buddhis tatva driktwasta bandanaha astita paramam yogam na deham bubude gatam. The Dadichi Muni controlled his senses, his life force, his mind, his intelligence, and became absorbed in trance. Thus, he cut all his bodily bonds, material bonds with the body. He could not even perceive how he was separated from his material body. And the demigods, when the Dadichi Muni felt that, having consciously reversed the process of creation, the demigods picked up his body and offered the bones to Vishwarup, who created the thunderbolt. And with that thunderbolt, Vritrasura was killed, and the demigods regained their kingdom. So the Dadichi Muni is an example of a yogi, of a devotee, of a transcendentalist who actually consciously gave up his life. And we can see that it happened in many, many devotees. Even our Srila Prabhupada, he consciously withdrew from this material world. Even our Bhaktitirtha Swami Maharaj, our dear Guru Dev, he consciously withdrew from this physical body. That is the perfection of yoga. The process of Ashtanga yoga involving yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi is meant to reverse the process of creation, as described in this verse. However, it is very difficult, almost impossible, practically not feasible for the residents of Kali Yuga, because it is difficult to embark on a path of austerity, path of renunciation, path of detachment that involves very serious decisions and lifestyles. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, realizing the difficulty that the living entities in Kali Yuga would face in trying to reverse this process of creation, he came and gave us a very simple process, a simple and easy process. Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Krishna Bhava Mitahi Yaha, Aswadyan Swadhyayam Bhaktam Prema Diksham Asikshayat. That Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he appeared in this world out of his own sweet will, out of his own causeless mercy, to distribute the sweet nectarian names of Krishna. He appeared to distribute the nectar of Krishna consciousness through the holy names, through Nam Sankirtan, through the chanting of the holy names. And therefore, it is said that Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, they appeared in this world like the sun and the moon, two luminous bodies that appeared on the horizon of Gaudadesh to dissipate the darkness, the dense darkness that had engulfed Kali Yuga. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu, they are so kind, understanding our predicament, our precarious situation. They have appeared in this world to give us this very sublime process, which is also very easy to practice. And by such practice, one can easily reverse this process. We don't really need to reverse. All that we need to do is to remember the names of the Lord at the moment of death. If one is able to remember Krishna's names, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's form, Krishna's activities, Krishna's birth, one is immediately transferred to the spiritual sky without a doubt. And so, Srila Prabhupada writes that Maharaj Yudhishthira, after distributing his kingdom to Parikshit and Vajra, did not think himself emperor of the world or head of the Kuru dynasty. This sense of freedom from material relations, as well as freedom from the material engagement of the gross and subtle and encirclement, makes one free to act as the servitor of the Lord, even though one is in the material world. So, Yudhishthira Maharaj, being a great devotee of Lord Krishna, he has attained perfection, not by this Astanga Yoga process, no, by the process of bhakti, by serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. Yudhishthira Maharaj has been able to reverse the process of creation. So therefore, it is said that those who are desirous of achieving the same result as Yudhishthira Maharaj had obtained, the same process is there. Ya kata bhagavata kata niyuro kamanaha guna karmashraya pumbir samsa vyasta bubu shubir. Those who are desirous of achieving complete perfection of life must submissively hear all topics that are connected with the transcendental activities and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who acts wonderfully for the pleasure of his devotees. So the systematic process of hearing the transcendental activities, qualities, and names of Lord Krishna pushes one towards eternal life. This systematic hearing means knowing him gradually in truth and fact. As Krishna himself mentions in Bhagavad Gita, Jarma karma chamen di bim. Ivam yo veti tatwa taha. One who knows me in truth, one who knows about my appearance and activities in truth, becomes liberated from the gross engagement of this material world. So, to achieve the same result that Yudhishthira Maharaj has achieved, the recommendation is to hear and repeat, hear and repeat, and remember the glorious activities of Uttama Sloka, Krishna. Krishna is described as Uttama Sloka. He is glorified by choice poetry. So when one hears the glories of the Lord, one becomes cleansed of all the impurities, and one becomes eligible to attain the spiritual world. Aham mama bimanto tutai karma loba dibiri malahi vitam yada mana shudam adukam ashokam samam. When one is completely cleansed of the impurities of lust and greed produced from the false identification of the material body of I and mine, one's mind becomes purified. In that pure state, he transcends the stage of so-called material distress and happiness and experiences the true self of his identity. Furthermore, it is also said, Tada Purusham Atmanam Kevalam Prakrite Param Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir Animanam Akanditam. At the time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. So, to follow the footsteps of Yudhishthira Maharaj in annihilating the gross body of 5 elements into the qualitative modes of material nature, and merging them in nations, and then absorbing that nations into the self, which is Brahman, which is inexhaustible. The process of bhakti yoga is recommended for everyone in this age. And if we follow this recommended process, it is possible to reverse the process of creation, which involves the modes, and one can become liberated to return to the spiritual sky where we actually belong. The material world is not our home. We are just here for a short while. Eventually, everyone will have to leave. We are like travelers. A traveler cannot remain traveling forever. He has to return to his home. So we are all travelers in this material world. Actually, it is said that a time factor brings people together from one end of the universe to the other end of the universe. And the same time factor separates people. The Bhagavatam says, human beings are like straw floating on the river of time. And from time to time, the straws are brought together as friends, as relatives. But again, the same time will separate the straw downstream, and each one will go its own direction. So that is life. We meet as family members, we meet as friends, we meet as colleagues, as mates in school. That is the course of time. In the course of time, We are brought together. Also, in the course of time, we will be separated. So before that time comes, one must perfect himself in reversing the order of creation, in merging the 5 gross elements into the 3 qualitative modes of nature, and merging that into nations, and merging the nations into Brahman. Then one's life becomes perfect, and one is eligible to return to the spiritual world. And that is the great mercy Srila Prabhupada has brought to the world. And by that mercy, all of us are connected to this wonderful mercy of Srila Prabhupada. On this note, I will say thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few things. I think my time is up, it's 4 o'clock. Any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Well, one quick thing I want to say is we are asked not to be proud, but I must say that I've always been proud, and today I'm very, very proud to say I am proud that I have been your student, I've been your little brother, I've been your son, and fortunately, unfortunately, even though I'm not as well read, but the love for reading is there in me because you inculcated that in me. And with that, I thank you a lot. And I urge all your disciples and those who study under you to not become lazy and just follow your footsteps and be very much engrossed in our scriptures, because it's always so beautiful when you speak, Prabhuji. It's so beautiful.
Srila Prabhupada's mercy, Srila Gurudev's mercy, Vaishnava's mercy.
Thank you so much.
Nothing. That's their mercy.
I wish we could be here for time, eternity. But Kusha Prabhu, the GBC, I guess, has a question. Please unmute.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Prabhu, happy to see you.
Obeisances, Maharaj. Thank you.
I'll make my obeisances also.
Your class gives some provocative problems.
Oh.
Like we are going to clash a bit.
All right, so let's hear the problems.
You mentioned life is like a river that brings the bubbles, the seashore. Sometime after they go back away, we will all live here one day. So my question is, as great devotees, when we know that we will leave this world one day, why are we so unforgiving among ourselves? No matter any little differences, we keep grudges, we don't want to work together. When we know that we will leave this world one day, like a river, like ocean, like we said. So what is the cause? Or are we not really practicing practical devotional service? Or are we just in theory? Do what I say, don't do what I do. I want to understand this because the philosophy is deep. If we are conscious, we say we are Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious. But we know these philosophies, but most of devotees around the world cannot collaborate, cannot live in peace. How can we go back to Godhead?
Thank you for your question. It's a very deep question, very deep. We shall try to say something. You see, the fact is that this process is divine process, no two ways about it. Krishna consciousness is a transcendental process. And it was inaugurated by the Lord himself. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inaugurated this process of Krishna consciousness in this Kali Yuga. And we could see his interactions with many, many people. Instantly, they were relieved of all the impurities, the anarthas. Anyone who met Lord Chaitanya was immediately relieved of all the anarthas, and they would just weep, cry, and lament for their inability to serve the Lord nicely. That there are many instances where the Lord actually relieved the living entity of his burden. So we are all carrying different weights of burden. And as I mentioned in the initial part of my speech presentation, you see, the false ego is very, very, very strong because it is in everything we do, everything. Without a false ego, there is no material creation. And it's the first element of impurity to emerge from the Mahatattva. And it combines with the three modes. The three modes themselves are very difficult to deal with. But then those three modes now combine with the ahankar, the false ego, to create everything else. Our mind, our intelligence, our senses, our body, everything we see is coming from the combination of the false ego and the most material nature. The water we drink, the food we eat, electricity, whatever, they are all combination of the false ego and the most material nature. And that makes things very, very difficult. We preach very good, but the issue is, are we able to overcome the ego? I think Bhakti-Tirtha Maharaj, our dear most Guru Maharaj, he wrote a book, Die Before You Die. And in that book, he said, the greatest enemy of the spiritual person is the false ego. So to the degree we are able to give up this identity of I and mine, to that degree we can agree with others, we can take a humble position, we can let go all the grudges, and to that degree we still identify with the ego of I and mine. To that degree we will not let go grudges, let go misunderstandings, let go whatever difficult things we are having with each other. So one level is to speak the philosophy nicely. One level is to try to practice as much as possible. And the other level is to actually overcome the false ego. I don't want to say certain things, but even if you go to the top level of our society's management, you will see certain traces which suggest that people are still struggling with the egos. Because if devotees are still talking about black bodies and white bodies and yellow bodies and that bodies, then where are we heading towards? One devotee a few days ago was talking about, in Ghana, we have different devotees from different parts of the country. Some come from the north, some come from the south, some come from this, some come from that. I said, Prabhu, yeah, in the Hare Krishna temple. In the Hare Krishna temple, we don't talk about tribes. We don't talk about where you come from. We are talking about Krishna and the spirit soul. So if you start talking about where different devotees come from, you are just in Maya. But that is his understanding. So the real fact is, yes, we are in the process of purification. We are in the process of Krishna consciousness. But it does not mean that we have reached the end of the perfection. We have not come to the end of that perfection. Different degrees, we are at different levels of that process. And those who have actually reached the final level, they are very fortunate. You see, Haridas Thakur took a very humble birth. That was the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In one of the Gaudiya Vaishnava literatures, I can't remember the name now, but it's mentioned that in the previous life of Haridas, he was a Brahmana, but he was a little bit proud of his Brahminical culture, Brahminical status, that at one point he was going to offer food to the deities, and the tulsi leaf fell on the ground. And instead of him to wash the tulsi leaf before offering to the Lord, out of pride, he just picked the tulsi leaf from the ground and put it on top of the offering and offered it to the Lord, out of pride. And so the Lord humbled him. In his next life, he took birth as a Muslim, but he was still attracted to the process of Krishna consciousness. And so in that humility, Haridas had no pride. His pride was taken away from him by his humble circumstances of birth. So Krishna is looking at all of us. He's examining all of us as a super soul. He sees our level of surrender. He sees our level of freedom from this false ego. He sees all that. And he encourages us to come along. He's pushing us to come along so that we can eventually give up this false ego. So practice of humility, practice of tolerance are key in the life of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And that is why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even though he did not write any books, he gave us only 8 stanzas, the 8 Shikshastikam prayers. But all the philosophy of Krishna consciousness can be found in those 8 stanzas. And in the 3rd stanza, he highlighted the process by which one can attain perfection. Trinara pisuni chena taro apisa hisnuna amanena manadena kirtanaya sadahari. So we are all in the process at different stages of perfection. One who has reached the end, we can see there are some devotees we can see in our movement. They are free from this false ego. I can merely mention Radhana Maharaj. I've interacted with him many times, and I feel that he does not think himself this body anymore. I can talk about Jayapataka Maharaj. I've interacted with him many times, and I can see he doesn't really bother very much about bodies. I've interacted with Kavichandra Maharaj. He doesn't bother about these different levels of bodies. And many more I've seen. There are people in our society today who are not bothered about your material situation, where you come from, whether you're black, white, green, yellow, they don't bother. All that they are trying to see is the essence of that soul. So there are people in our system who have actually transcended the body. But it is not everyone who have transcended. But the good thing is that we are on the path. We are progressing. by our daily practices of Krishna consciousness, we are progressing. And there is every hope that in the future, we would be able to reach there. Srila Prabhupada says that that person who is in the bathroom taking a bath is just a matter of time. He will be clean. If one refuses to go to the bathroom, then he has a case. It's a pitiable case. The one who accepts to go into the bathroom and starts to bath, we just have to appreciate that and pray that with time, he will come out clean. So we are all in the bathroom of Krishna consciousness, and we are trying to take a bath, a spiritual bath, so that we can be clean of the false ego. Then our relationship will be very sweet. In fact, because of this ego, we have crashes, we have misunderstandings, we have quarrels. There are so many things that are happening. All is coming from this false ego, this dirty ego that is combining with all the modes of nature. It has entered every material thing we can see. It is coming from there. And fortunate is that soul that has transcended this ego. Then it means you are no more part of this material world. You are a resident of the spiritual world. So we are praying that we can transcend this ego and come to the transcendental platform. And I request all the devotees to pray for me so that I can give up this ego of I and mine and be a better instrument in the service of my Guru Maharaj, in the service of Srila Prabhupada, in the service of Shri Gaur Nitai. That is my prayer. Thank you for the question. I hope I've done something to your question.
Maharaj, thank you very much. Are you hearing?
Well, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, since you are begging for the devotees' prayers, we are actually on our knees begging for your mercy that we can also at least attempt to break this hard knot, false ego, because we like myself, I said, I am eternally your servitor. We're learning from you. So thank you so much for the answer.
Hare Krishna. I'm seeing Ganga Prasad Prabhu, his hand is up. Hare Krishna, happy to see you.
My obeisances at your lotus feet.
My obeisances at your lotus feet. You are doing the work of Mahaprabhu every day. You are going out and distributing books. I want to be an otter so that I can take shelter there.
I only raise my hand like a student in the classroom to say present, sir. I am present. And also appreciate the sequence of the lecture. You took us in the interaction of Maitreya and Vidura, and then Lord Kapila and Mother Devahuti. This is Sankhya philosophy.
Hare Krishna.
And in the end, you took it from beginning, amalgamation, and you pieces it into pieces and bits, and then you brought us to the end. I'm very grateful that I attended this class. Thank you very much. I only have one little need that I will want you to help me.
Okay.
You called with Yudhishthira a yogi. You called him a yogi.
Yeah.
And because of his yogic capacity, he was able to do this amalgamation.
Yeah.
So those of us who have not tread the path of yoga in isolation of bhakti yoga, and how in the end are we going to achieve this amalgamation process?
Thank you. I think I also mentioned along the line how Mahaprabhu has mercifully come to give us another process which does not involve this amalgamation as Yudhishthira Maharaj did, or the Tarashtra Maharaj did, or Dandichi Muni did. Because in this, our age of Kali, things are very, very difficult. So therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made it much, much easier that if you just chant the holy names sincerely, that result of amalgamation will be achieved by this process of bhakti. So, and Krishna tells us that the best of yogis is that yogi who actually thinks of him 24 hours. Yoginamapi sarvesham. That person who abides in Krishna, who follows Krishna's instruction, who meditates on Krishna, he is the greatest of yogis. That is Krishna's opinion. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us this process of chanting Hare Krishna. And by that process, we can also achieve the same result of amalgamating the material elements into the modes of nature and then into Brahman. And in fact, many devotees of this glorious movement of Srila Prabhupada's society, ISKCON, they have left very gloriously. Many devotees. We have heard how glorious many devotees left. You know, one devotee left seeing Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He left on the appearance of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So as he was lying with his eyes closed, all of a sudden he opened his eyes, and then he's looking in one direction, and the devotees who were with him were watching him. He's looking in one direction, he's looking in one direction. All of a sudden he shouted, "Oh, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you are here." And then he ended his life. So such a devotee has amalgamated the elements of the body, and he has transcended the world. There was also one Mataji in Ireland. The night before she would pass, she went into coma, and she found herself in a beautiful kitchen where Srimati Radharani was instructing her how to cook for Krishna. And a day or two after that, she passed on. This was a lady, a housewife. She was, her whole life, she was just a cook. She was cooking for devotees in the temple. She wasn't a big-time preacher. She wasn't a great yogi. He wasn't performing any serious tapasya. He wasn't even a renunciate. But just by serving the devotees very nicely and chanting her rounds very nicely, 2 days before she left, Srimati Radharani came to her and took her and showed her where she was going to be before she left her body. So there are many, 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 many examples of our devotees living, attaining perfection. And so it means that this process is very potent, is very powerful. And if we just follow it, we would get there, guaranteed. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Kavi Kanapur Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Kavi Kanapur Prabhu.
Hey, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances.
I saw some wonderful program in Abuja, and I was excited. I saw Jagannath Ratha Yatra in Abuja, and I said, "This is amazing." It happened.
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, they organize it every year. So this year, somehow the devotee, they just took some pictures. So I collected from them. So yeah.
But I saw your insight.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Wonderful. It's good. It's good.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
So
Krishna,
what is your
Maharaj.
question or comment?
Yes, Maharaj. So sorry, Maharaj. I'm in my office, so there's some customer here. So, but I will ask my question now.
No problem.
Yes. So my question is that in the big that one is 16. So in the beginning, you mentioned about that where everybody has his expiring dates.
Yes, right.
Yes, I had that very clearly. Please, I will set you later. I had that very clearly. So the thing is that I wanted to ask is that what happens when some people try they expand their time of death? Like if they can, like Prabhupada sometimes did that, you know, and even materially we see even in Africa here, people they do that with material science, not only spiritual science. So my question is that does Yamaraj really very packer in his duty of this expiring date? That is number one. And there is another question. The other question is that you talk about first ego. I will come back. Yeah. So you talk about first ego. You talk about first ego. And the first, what I wanted to ask about first ego is that, do you think that it would be possible for every leader to go back to Goloka Vrindama? Because I can see to be a leader and be free from first ego, it will be very difficult to Kai. It is very difficult because being a leader means I have to control, I have to correct. And if you are not in that sense of first ego that I have to do this, how can you do that? And you mentioned very rightly about that Mataji who just ordinary cooking, and he doesn't have a big profile portfolio. And you can see all the sign that he went back to God because he has no managerial duty, he has no first ego. So he just humbly doing a cooking. So Maharaj, I want you to throw light to these two questions. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you very much. The issue of people extending their lifespan is of great interest. Yes, it is possible. Actually, there is a verse somewhere where it says that if one does not want to meet death, he should invite Yamaraj. He should get in touch with Yamaraj. Yamaraj can extend your life for you. But there are material processes that people can extend their lives. And there are yogic processes that people can also extend their lives. Even there are bhakti processes that people can extend their lives. Yes. So we don't rule that out. But that does not mean that Yamaraj is not doing his work well. It means that Yamaraj has been informed. Yamaraj, I don't want to say he has been bribed. But Yamaraj is aware that this person is extending his life, and Yamaraj agrees. So it is said that we must know how to please Yamaraj, because Yamaraj, he has a register, and he has the lifespan of everyone. He knows. And as soon as the time is closed, he will send his Yamadutas, his constables, to go arrest the person. So there are ways by which Yamaraj can be talked to, can be pleaded with to extend one's life. Exactly how it is done, it is not a physical thing we can see, but we have seen people I also know of a man in my village who lived over 140 years. And the stories were that he was extending his life by changing his life with animals and trees and human beings and all that. They were saying, there were speculations about him. How he's doing it, I don't know. But he lived for 140 something years before he died. So it is possible. Yogis can do it. You know, it is said that everybody has a number of breaths. The day you are born, you have a number of breaths you have to breathe before you leave. So depending on how you utilize those number of breaths, that would tell how long you will live. So it is a science, and the yogis are very good at it. Some yogis, they stop breathing for long, long hours. And so by that method, they prolong their lives. So if one knows the art of how to control his breath, he can actually prolong his life as long as possible. And so there are yogis living for 800 years, 1,000 years, many, many years they are living because they know the art of controlling their breath. So anyone who knows that art of controlling his breath, Yamaraj will understand. Yamaraj, he sees, he knows that this person knows the art of controlling his breath, and so he can live as long as possible. But those of us who don't know that art of controlling our breath, then our time will run out. But those who know that, even traditionally, or even by science or by yoga, they know the art of controlling the breath, they can live as long as possible. There may be other methods, but from the yoga point of view, if you can control your breath and breathe sparingly, you can live as long as you want. Then the second issue about giving up false ego and the position of leadership. Leadership is a very challenging position. It's very challenging because as a leader, you are supposed to act without attachment. And that is the most challenging part of leadership. In material life or material position, you use your position, you use your weight, you use your status to deal with others. But when it comes to Krishna consciousness, you do it with detachment. You do it for the benefit of devotees. And that is the difficulty. You correct devotees without attachment. You correct devotees without bringing your ego inside. You correct devotees, direct devotees without, promoting your ego. It is a very difficult art, but it is possible. It is possible. I think I narrated one story. In Spain, Srila Prabhupada had gone to Spain to install Jagannath deities. And the temple president, the altar wasn't made properly. It was weak. And as soon as they put the deities on top, it was tilted to one side and it was going to fall. And when Prabhupada saw that, he was so angry. He was so angry. He started to scream at the temple president. And there was a young girl who had read one of Prabhupada's books and was attracted to the movement. And when he heard that Prabhupada was coming to Spain, she also came. And she was in the gathering. And so she has read somewhere where Srila Prabhupada was saying one must control his temper and one must always chant Hare Krishna under all circumstances, under all challenges, once you just resort to chanting Hare Krishna, and that will solve all problems. He read that from Prabhupada's book. So when Srila Prabhupada became very angry over the carelessness of the temple president, this young girl raised her hand and said, Swamiji, why are you so angry? In your book, you said we can overcome all these challenges by chanting Hare Krishna. So why don't you chant Hare Krishna? So
Pure devotee.
This young girl was instructing Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada immediately changed his mood. From that high level of anger, immediately he dropped his anger and he picked up his beat and began to chant as instructed by the young girl. And the girl was surprised. He was thinking Prabhupada was going to retort back or say something else, but Prabhupada just followed that instruction. And Prabhupada also showed that his anger was not material. His anger was for the purpose of correcting the disciple who was erring and was careless, and maybe the deities would fall to the ground. So Prabhupada demonstrated that. He was angry in 1 second, the next second, the anger was gone completely, and he started chanting his beats softly and smiling. So this young girl could see that that anger was not a material anger. He was just trying to correct a disciple. So the point I'm trying to bring out here is that as a leader, we have to correct. We cannot avoid correcting. Then you're not doing your work. But at the same time, we should do that as a service to help the devotee. So we must do it with detachment. That I'm not doing it because I'm superior to him. I'm not doing it because I'm the authority. I'm not doing it because I want to bring him down. I'm not doing it because I want to retaliate in some way. He did something I didn't like. No, the mood should be, I want to help this devotee. And if you do it in that mood, there is no offense. There is no false ego. You can still go back home, back to Godhead, even though you are the GBC.
Maharaj, thank you very much. Just quick one regarding that girl correcting Prabhupada.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it when you gave that example, Maharaj. I was just thinking if we were to be in Nigeria or in Africa precisely, I'm very sure that girl, that will be the last time he will come to that temple.
It's true. They would have done something to her. But Prabhupada took him very lightly. Prabhupada took his beads and chanted, and nobody said anything. And I'm sure that that girl became a devotee later because he saw that Prabhupada and accepted what he was saying. And he just cooled down and he just chanted and he was smiling with everybody. He gave up his anger. So he could see the difference. So yeah, if it is in our zone, probably that devotee will be lynched.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, thank you very much.
Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. I think Maharaj is up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Shriman Vara Prabhu, please unmute.
Jai Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Varahaji.
My respectful obeisances to everybody.
Our obeisance also. I say my obeisances.
Right. Thank you for the nice lecture. Very enlightening. First, on the last question, I have my own question, but just on this last one, the girl correcting Prabhupada. I think I want to see that like just maybe Prabhupada pastime or something spiritual was happening. Because I've also witnessed something similar, and it was not very interesting.
Okay.
Because Bhaktipad visiting Nigeria, Bhaktipad, yeah, and then he came, I was in Ibadan, and he came to Ibadan. And you must be knowing this guy, Dr. Sharma.
Okay. I know Sharma at the Botanical Department of University of Ibadan.
Right. So he was there with in the temple room with many other people. So he asked some question. I can't remember what the question was. And Srila Bhaktipada was heavy on him. And then he said, Maharaj, why are you hungry? You're Swami, why you shouldn't be hungry? And Bhaktipada said, I'm not hungry at you, but I'm correcting your mentality. So it went off just like that, like a flash. Bhaktipada returned, left Ibadan. 2 days after, Sharma was admitted in the hospital.
Wow.
Seriously sick. And his wife came to the temple. And his wife said, Dr. Sharma had asked him to come and collect the picture of Bhaktipada. He wants to put it on top of his bed in the hospital. And the wife said, my husband is a doctor and has never, ever been to the hospital all the time I've known him. People come to him rather for acupuncture and other things. That since he has ever known him, he's never been sick up to the point of being admitted. So they all concluded that what happened in the temple, he was getting reaction for that. So they just asked, give me the guru's picture so that he can have his mercy. So we shouldn't take it like, we could be that, saucy and try to correct it. The pure devotee, we could have problem with that.
And it's true.
So whatever happened between that girl and Prabhupada might have been some lila. And maybe who knows who the girl was. But it's not something we have to take for granted and think we can also do the same.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So that's just my contribution. Then now, you see, our process, we always analyze life and death in a way that most often people think that we are pessimistic.
Yeah, pessimistic.
And people think that we're actually saying withdraw from activity, don't do anything, just wait for death, that kind of a thing. So if somebody's listening or listen closely to this description of leaving the body and and giving up material, giving up the body and living this world, that kind of conclusion sometimes comes to people's mind. But then I have a question. The thing is, we know, and the scripture informs us, that our spiritual DNA is perfect. That we are created perfect, and our spiritual DNA is of perfection, which is waiting to be expressed. That perfection is looking for an expression. But because of this material covering, and because of the way we also react, because we've been conditioned to react. So this conditioning makes us, instead of being able to express our perfection, we become depressed. We become worried and anxious, anxiety, and all that stuff. And then we live a miserable life. Now, some people may be living that kind of life and thinking it's spiritual because they're constantly dejected, depressed, anxious, and unable to see their perfection within. Whereas a realized person, a realized soul, should be able to express its perfection. As we could see in the beautiful, glowing example of people like Prabhupada and many other Mahajans who came and left their imprints or their footprints, for others to follow. If they've not been able to express their perfection, we will not be following their footsteps or wanting to be like them. So I hope you can get the link of my question. The thing is, sometimes thinking that our whole existence between life and death is, just whiling away time for death to come, and there isn't much to do yet. But I think we have a duty to express the perfection, what God has given us as a gift, and use it back and offer it back to Him, as an offering. But that gift will not be seen. It will not be manifested if we are like running away from expressing that perfection. So that's just my question. I hope you get it.
Yeah, well, what I can say is that the perfection is there, and that is the ultimate, and everybody will get there somehow or the other. It's a matter of time. But you're talking about how to express that perfection. That perfection can be expressed in our dealings with each other. It can be expressed in our dealings with other living entities. It can be expressed in our day-to-day activities, because once that perfection is there, why should we express it? For instance, if the perfection is there, one should have an intense desire to share this Krishna consciousness with as many people as possible. It is a way of expressing that perfection. Once we are relishing the beauty of Krishna consciousness, we are relishing this process of Krishna consciousness, we should express it by our eagerness to share with others. And similarly, in various levels, various ways, we can express our Krishna consciousness in a way that people can benefit. The perfection of Krishna consciousness is to come to the level whereby you want to do good to everyone, because you see the benefit of Krishna consciousness, you see the joy of Krishna consciousness, so you are eager to share that joy with everyone. And so you express it by helping whoever comes in your contact, whoever you come in contact with. You want to express that perfection, which is love, with that person. And by doing so, you are also helping that person to come to the level of perfection. So the only way we can express that perfection is through service, is through activity. We cannot just sit in one place and say we are attaining perfection. There is no interaction, there is no sharing, there is no, any way of helping others to come to that level. Then how do you express your perfection? The perfection can be expressed when you take on the responsibility to help others, as many as possible, to also come to your level. And so that is why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing everyone. Yarit Deha. What is the verse? That
Krishna Padesh.
That's right. That everyone should preach. Everyone should distribute Krishna consciousness. Everyone should be an instrument to share this love, to share this gift of Krishna consciousness. And that is the way we can express it. We cannot say we have attained that perfection, but we are not sharing, we are not expressing, we are not giving others the chance to also gain. So for me, I think to express that perfection is to share, is to encourage others, is to help others so that they can also come to that level. That is the way I will want to express that perfection.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the beautiful answer. Some few quick things I wanted to mention. One is Kavikanapur Prabhu's question about managers' chance of going back home, quite difficult because they have to use the false ego. And Prabhuji, you beautifully answered. I understand that the false ego is always going to be with us as long as we live in this material world. But there are three different categories of false ego: ignorance, passion, goodness. So as long as managers use the false ego in the mode of goodness, Krishna takes care of the rest, because it has to be used anyway. Talking about Ganga Prasad Prabhu's question, and I think Kavi Kanapur also asked about that, about amalgamation. I also visited one place in the north, and the king had this scientific ability of amalgamating the different elements together. So sometimes you go visit him in his room when he's sick, you do not see the living being lying on the bed, but you only feel strong air in the room. Sometimes, and I mean, they used to call me Commando, who is an Akan person, because they are the Mamprisi people. And if you're Mamprisi, I'll call Mamprondo, you know. And they kind of liked me so much, so they used to take me to the king's place. And I saw this with my own eyes. It's not a third story being said. Sometimes you go to the room and you feel like you are in 300 degrees Fahrenheit heat. He's been able to amalgamate all the fire element. So that reminds me of how Sati cremated her body. And Sita also. I will encourage the devotees, when they're reading Srimad Ramayana, should just read Valmiki's, because Valmiki's story is more accurate than the others, even though others may be so beautiful to read, because according to Valmiki's Ramayana, it wasn't the story we popularly know that Sri Ram asked Mother Sita to be tested in that fire to see her purity. That was not the case. According to Valmiki Ramayana, it was Sita herself who felt that this is too much, she can no more bear it. She is going to consume her body in fire. So that is another thing. Now when it comes to this intricate and complex science of this amalgamation, my question is, probably you were talking about the Mahatattva, Mahavishnu, who is the cause of all this material creation. Initially, created three elements: time, destiny, and nature. Now, my question is in this line. If Mahavishnu created time, destiny, nature, what did the individual living entities, what did they do to deserve a particular time given to them and a particular destiny given to them and a particular nature given to them? If the individual souls haven't done anything to warrant or deserve a particular nature, how then does Mahavishnu assign these different natures to different beings? That's just what I want to find out. Does that mean that we were somewhere before we came into Mahavishnu's creation?
Well, thank you, Prabhu. This is this question is a bit rhetoric, because it goes back to the issue of the origin of the jiva. But what I want to say is that see, the process of material creation is also described as Nitya Lila. That means it is also going on eternally. And that is why Srila Prabhupada says, there is no history. No one can point some historical data when the living entity fell into the material world, or when the living entity gave up the association of Krishna. They said there is no historical data we can find. But the fact remains that this material creation is also described as Nitya Lila. It is manifested, maintained, annihilated. Again, manifested, maintained, annihilated. So it's an ongoing process. So what happened is that the time factor, it is actually called eternal time, kala. Kala is eternal time. Time is eternal, but it is conspicuously absent in the spiritual world. The time, the influence of time is conspicuously absent in the spiritual world. But that does not mean that there's no time. Eternal time is there. It becomes manifest in the material world. In the spiritual world, there is time, but time has no influence on the beings in the spiritual world. The three phases of time can manifest according to the devotee's desire in the spiritual world. If a devotee wants to participate in Krishna's morning pastimes, morning will manifest. If Krishna wants to participate in Krishna's noontime pastimes, noon will manifest. If Krishna wants to participate in Krishna's nighttime pastimes, night will manifest. So the time factor manifests according to the devotee's desire. Time factor has no influence. Time factor does not control anybody there. The devotees and the Lord, they rather control time. But in the material world, time controls everything. So at the point of creation, time is already there. It is only injected. Mahavishnu's business is to inject time into the Mahatattva. The same thing, the destiny of the living entity is also there. The nature of the living entity is there from the previous creation, from the previous existence, before they were withdrawn into the belly of Mahavishnu. So that destination, in other words, the total destination of the living entities, what they want to achieve, what they want to do, that is called the destination. And then their nature, wanting to enjoy away from the Lord, wanting to exploit material nature, that is their nature, swabhava. So these things are already there. They only become dormant in the belly of Mahavishnu. And then at the point of creation, the Mahavishnu injects them into the Mahatattva to initiate the material creation. So the it is not something that is created. It is something that has been there from time immemorial and is only facilitated by Mahavishnu. And so it gives the chance to living entities to rectify themselves, because it is said that this material creation is actually Krishna's mercy to allow the living entity to rectify his position. Without the material creation, without giving them the opportunity to try to enjoy and at the same time practice Krishna consciousness, associate with devotees, if that facility is not there, then how will they rectify themselves? So therefore, Krishna arranges to have the material creation for the pleasure of the living entity. At the same time, he also gives a process by which they can return home. So it is not something new that is created. It has been existing from time immemorial. The Mahavishnu simply injects it into Mahatattva so that the whole program of manifesting the material energy becomes possible, because without the time factor, without the destiny of the living entities, without the nature of the living entities, the modes of nature will not be agitated. They will remain in equilibrium. And so long as they remain in equilibrium, the material creation cannot take place. So this time factor, this destiny of the living entity, the nature of the living entity serve as a catalyst to activate the three modes of nature. And once these three modes of nature are activated, then the whole material process of creation begins. So it is a recycled program. It's recycled creation, maintenance, annihilation. Creation, maintenance, annihilation. The cycle goes on eternally. So it is difficult to say when did it start and when will it end. There is no reference point where it started, and there is no reference point where it's going to end. That is why it is called Nitya Lila. So I don't know what I've tried to answer your question, but this is, if somebody else has some other additions to make, is most welcome.
No, you did. Thank you. But I just have another question, which I think is kind of silly, but
Okay.
it's probably thought-provoking also. And that is, you narrated the beautiful story about the Dadichi.
Okay, Dadichi Muni.
Yeah, Dadichi Muni. This Devas wanted his body, his bones.
Bones.
As recommended by Lord Vishnu himself.
Yeah.
Now, this Dadichi, I understand he himself was an Ayurvedic doctor, and he actually trained the Ashwini Kumaris.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now, my question is, if the Devas do not fall ill, what is the need for these Ashwini Kumaris being physicians to them?
Okay. Well,
do they fall sick like we earthly beings, that they require somebody to take care of their health?
Well, yes. Srila Prabhupada writes somewhere that the miseries of material existence is available even in the higher planetary system. The miseries of birth, disease, old age, and death, they are also available in the heavenly kingdom. They may not be so rampant as we experience it here, but certainly there is sickness, there is old age, there is death, there is birth. That is characteristic of the material world. So whether you find yourself in the hellish planets, you find yourself in the middle planetary system, or you find yourself in the heavenly planets, these things are there. Even Brahma has to take birth from the lotus flower. So everyone has to take birth And just as everyone has to take birth, everyone will also get sick, and everyone will get old, and everyone will die. So even Brahma, when Brahma was creating, he was attacked when he was executing the order of the Supreme Lord in creating the beings to fill the universe. He created the yakshas and the rakshasas who wanted to eat him up. So Brahma has to run for his life. Brahma was in great anxiety, and he had to run to the Supreme Lord. At that time, the Aswini Kumaras weren't yet created. The demigods weren't yet created. So he has to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was in great anxiety. He wanted to be relieved of that anxiety. So he ran to the Supreme Lord. Similarly, when he created the demons, Asuras, they wanted to have sex with him. And again, Brahma has to run to the Supreme Lord. So he had challenges. He had serious challenges in the process of creation, in the process of his service. And therefore, if the Aswini Kumaras were there, probably they could have helped him to overcome some of the difficulties he was facing. But because they were not yet created, so Brahma has to go to Lord Vishnu himself for solutions. And then some demigods, they also have some crisis. Indra has crisis. Varuna has crisis. And when they have those crises, they go to the Aswini Kumaras for solutions. So their role as the doctors of the demigods is important, because whatever we're experiencing in this world also takes place in the heavenly planet. Only the rate at which it takes place may be limited. We may experience birth, death, old age very frequently, but there they live for long, long lives. So old age may not be visible, but it's there. Death may not be visible, but it's there. Birth may not be visible, but it's there, because to take a body means you have to be born, means you have to grow old, means you have to get sick, and means you have to die. So they are there, but they are not very obvious. And so there's a need for a department of medicine by which they can be treated when they're in anxiety. And actually the demigods, they fall into anxiety also when the demigods attack them. And sometimes when there is war, the demigods are wounded, they are killed. And then the Aswini Kumaras have to bring them back to life. They have to heal them. They have to treat them. So there is a need, because the Asuras from time to time always attack the heavenly planets and create havoc. And at that particular time, the services of the Aswini Kumaras is needed.
Yeah, thank you. These demons are very crazy. Another thing that I'm probably please on mute.
We can probably land over to now. Please accept my
Hare Krishna. You're welcome. What's your question?
Thank you. Yes, still is based on Daddy Chimuni.
Okay.
Narrated that when Vitrasura was killing the soldiers of the demigod, they approached me for his bone.
Yes.
To use in the thunderbolt.
Yeah.
My question is, that serve a material purpose. So in other words, killing himself or giving up the living breath within himself, that serve material purpose. To me, it sounds to me like a suicide. Or how? Because this does not serve a higher purpose. To me, it serves a material purpose. So I need a little bit clarification over there. Or can we say, so long as it's a Lord Vishnu who directed the demigods to him, for that matter, is spiritual? I need a little bit clarification. That particular.
Thank you. Yes, we may see it as a material venture of engaging in battles with the demons and fighting and defeating.
I remember, boys, like
but actually, as I already said, because Lord Vishnu was involved, we can see some spiritual purpose. In particular, you see, Vritrasura was a great devotee of the Lord. Vritrasura was King Chitraketu in his previous life. And he had attained perfection when he was given a mantra to chant, and for 6 days, he chanted a mantra and he saw Lord Shankarshan. And then he was given this airplane, and then he was in the association of the Vidyadharas, the ladies of Vidyadharas, and he was flying over the whole universe. Because Chitraketu Maharaj had a desire for marrying many wives. You know, he had 1 million, I mean, it is mentioned 10 million wives or something. He had 10 million wives. So even when he attained perfection, that desire had not left him completely. So even when he attained perfection, he was given the facility of flying all over the whole universe in a special aircraft with the ladies, beautiful ladies from Vidyadhara planet. And so as Chitraketu was flying all over the whole place, he went to Kailash, the abode of Lord Shiva. And then Lord Shiva was given pravachan, he was given a lecture to thousands of sages, sannyasis, brahmacharis. Meanwhile, Lord Shiva's wife, Parvati, was sitting on Lord Shiva's lap. So Chitraketu Maharaj felt funny. He thought, this is funny. How can Lord Shiva, the greatest of all people, be lecturing sannyasis and brahmacharis? Meanwhile, his wife is sitting on his lap. It doesn't agree. So he laughed. And Parvati became angry with Chitraketu. And therefore he cursed Chitraketu. Therefore, laughing at my husband, you have to take the body of a demon. So when Chitraketu heard that curse, he descended with his plane and then paid obeisances to Parvati and begged for excuse. But that was it. Parvati had already issued a curse. So he has to take birth as a demon. So at that time, Twasta was performing the Jagya because Indra had killed Vishwarup, because Vishwarup was doing the Jagya for Indra. At the same time, he was feeding the demons, because Vishwarup, his mother comes from a demon and his father is the demigods. So while he was performing the Yagya for Indra, he was also putting some things aside for his uncle village, his mother's side. And when Indra detected that, he beheaded Vishwarup, his priest. So Twasta was angry with Indra, and he was performing Yagya to cause the death of Indra. And so at that time, Vritrasura Chitraketu took birth from that Yagya as a huge demon, Vritrasura. So Lord Vishnu wanted Vritrasura to go back home, back to Godhead. And the only way he could go back home to Godhead was if he were killed by the thunderbolt. So there is some spiritual purpose there. Because if Vritrasura were not killed, how would he have left his material body and go back home? So nobody could kill him. And only Lord Vishnu knew how he could be killed. And so he ordered that they should go and beg Dadichi Muni for his bones. And when Dadichi Muni gave the bones, then they created the thunderbolt. And with that thunderbolt, Vritrasura was killed. And when Vritrasura, before Vritrasura died, he actually told Indra that I am going back home, back to Godhead. You remain in the material world. You may own the whole creation, but you are still in the material world. So I'm going back home. You stay here. So it is said that actually, who won the battle? The person who won the battle was Vritrasura, because he went back home to Godhead and Indra remained in the material world. So the purpose of that arrangement was to facilitate the going back home of Vritrasura, who was Chitraketu in the previous life. So therefore, there is a benefit, a spiritual benefit of liberating Vritrasura from his demonic body that could not be killed by any means. So because Lord Vishnu is involved, and because it was a means to deliver Vritrasura from his body, it is considered spiritual.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the answer. I know Salika has his hand up, but there is a beautiful comment in the chat room from Larry Forward. His question here is, Hare Krishna, I think we need to have Shriman Varahatic classes. I know he said he's always busy at the scheduled time, but he can choose the date he will be free, at least once in a month. I can see we can learn from him if he takes on a class. That's Larry Forward's opinion. So maybe the administration will consider that, and then we'll see. Salika Prabhu, please unmute.
Hare Krishna, Salika Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my respectful obeisances of grace. Thank you so much for the wealth of wisdom. You know, sometimes when you take a prasadam feast, you sometimes become a glutton because it's prasadam, you're taking releasing the flow of the nectar of taking prasadam, and you're taking the physical prasadam. So sometimes you never know when you get to become a glutton. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a need for a question because the class is so satisfying. The question and answer session was so enlivening. I had several questions actually as you were giving the class. And even while you were answering the questions from Kavi Kanapura's question, Sade's question, certain topics came up, which is I'm trying to digest in my mind. But let me zero down to maybe one or two questions. My first question will be that when you're answering Kavi Kanapura's question, two questions he asked, but one of the questions you were answering the possibility of being able to extend human life, and then you gave personal experience and all of personal experience, and then some other scriptural experience of how people could extend their life.
Yeah.
But then when you were answering, I was trying to digest that. Then in the answering of Sade Prabhu's question, you mentioned when you are answering Mahavishnu inject time, and you talked about how living entity's destiny. So I started coming back to ask my question myself. If the living entity has the capacity to extend its life, and we say that destiny is already decided the life of a living entity, so how do we reconcile? Because destiny is beyond the control of living entity, and I'm remembering the story of Savitri also, because Savitri was able to agree with your assertion.
Life,
yeah, she by devotion. So in all of those answers, in one side is looking as if the living entity doesn't have the capacity to extend its duration of life, but from the other side, extend. So where do we draw the middle point?
Well, thank you for the question. So when we talk about the destiny of the living entity, it means that the material destination is what we are talking about, the destiny, because we desire to come into the material world to lord over material nature. We want to imitate Krishna. We want to become the lord of whatever we survey. So that creates our destiny. That is our nature, and that creates our destiny. So our destiny is the material world. And so that is a bit different from one extending his lifespan, because it's still within that destiny. Because once we enter the material world, it means we have to live for the life, we have to remain in the material world for the life of Brahma, which is 311 trillion, 40 billion years. That is the breath of Mahavishnu. That's the length of breath of Mahavishnu. So once we enter the material creation, it means we are going to be here for 311 trillion, 40 billion years. After that, we will be drawn back into Mahavishnu's belly. So within this period of 311 trillion, 40 billion years, when we change different bodies, different planets, different circumstances, different situations, we'll go through all that. And eventually, we will be withdrawn back into Mahavishnu's belly. For those who attain perfection during this 311 trillion years, they don't need to be withdrawn back into Mahavishnu's belly. They go back home. But those who have not attained perfection, they are withdrawn back into Mahavishnu's belly, and then they wait for another period when the Lord breathes out. So let's say the Lord breathes out in another 311 trillion years, 40 billion years. Then again, the living entities are brought back into the material creation. So that destiny of coming into the material creation, of living for 311 trillion, 40 billion years, of trying to lord over material nature, they are always there. But extending one's life, say you are a human being now, and you want to live more than, say, 100 years, or you want to live more than 200 years, that is still within that destiny, because the destiny extends 311 trillion, 40 billion years. That is the destiny of living in the material world, of trying to explore the material nature, and so on. So you can extend your life in one life, two lives, three lives, whichever way you can extend it, but it's still within that 311 trillion, 40 billion years. You cannot go beyond that. So in one sense, it only limits, it is, in one sense, it is, the destiny is already there. The nature is already there. The only difference is that you can adjust your life in this world as you like, based on certain practices. But you cannot go beyond the stipulated period of the universe. The universe has a lifespan, and nobody can go beyond that lifespan. But within that stipulated period, you can do so many things. You'll be given different bodies, and you can extend the lifespans of different bodies as you like by following certain principles, certain laid down rules and regulations. If you know them and you follow them, you can extend your life in different species, in different bodies, as much as you want. But the universal time scale for the universe cannot be exceeded. So that destiny cannot be changed. It cannot be exceeded. And that swabhava, the nature of the living entity, wanting to enjoy material nature, wanting to express material nature, cannot also be changed. It is there. So long as these are there, we can say destiny is not changed, swabhava is not changed. But in our micro way, in a particular body, you may extend your life, you may extend your activities, whatever, but it's all still within the universal time scale, because when the universe is withdrawn, everyone is withdrawn. And when the universe is manifested, everyone is manifested. So therefore, the destiny remains the same, the nature remains the same, but in our different lives on the different planets, maybe in different universes, we can make some adjustment here and there, but ultimately we still obey the time scale of the universe. When it's time for the universe to be withdrawn, we shall all go. And when it's time for the universe to be manifested, to be created, we shall all come back. So within this limitation, we obey the universal time scale. But then we can also, once we are in the universe, we are in different bodies, there is a facility, there is a process, there are some systems, and we follow in a particular life. We can also expand that, we can extend that. That facility is also there. But all is happening within the universal time scale. I don't know whether I have been able to.
Very beautiful. Beautifully answered. Thank you so much for this answer.
Well, Alika Prabhu, you saying very beautiful answer, but Prabhuji's answer brings about lots of questions. Actually.
That's exactly why I said it is beautiful, because it has opened up a whole lot of questions. Because
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, it's actually it's interesting because to know, because if I understand the answer properly, it means that there is destiny goes beyond just one perception, because there is a destiny within the span of a particular body, and destiny could be extended within the body of Lord Brahma. Just like we also have some living entities living in our own body, and they have their own destiny of life. So what if I understand the answer properly, it means that there is different destiny can be understood at different level of existence. That's beautiful. But then, Sir, if you don't mind, I want to ask one more question. I know that
if your question is in connection to this, but what I think what is Great Srimad VANACARI answered to, well, who am I to say that is not the case? It's the case, but I think when the scriptures say, sorry, let me do this. When the scriptures say that the very moment we were born, our day of death was also written down. And so when the scriptures say that, my understanding, except I'm understanding it wrongly, is that the scripture is talking about this particular body in this particular lifetime. And so if we contrast that to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself explaining the different modes of nature, where Krishna explains different types of food. There are certain foods in the mode of ignorance, and part of the characteristics is that it reduces one lifespan when we eat in the mode of ignorance. that reduces our lifespan. Again, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, chapter 8, verse 15, it talks about, we finished reading that. It talks about how Duryodhana and his crazy Kauravas humiliated Mother Draupadi. And it was said that because they humiliated Draupadi, they reduced their lifespan. So just by mistreating somebody could reduce your lifespan. Again, we see in the story of Mandukamuni and Yamaraj that Yamaraj is the person in charge of death. But because he is also within this material world, he is
Subject.
He is somebody who can also make mistakes.
Yeah, subject to mistakes.
Yeah, he is subject to making mistakes. So he made a mistake. And when Mandukamuni educated him, he got himself right. He says, okay, from this point to this point, you're not going to be held accountable. And we see sometimes the Yamadutas, they also make mistake. Instead of going to arrest this, so they go to the wrong person. So that means that these situations where somebody's life can be shortened or heightened is possible. But my understanding is that Lord Krishna knows if me, Sahadev, I'm going to live a particular lifestyle to prolong my life or not. He knows. But it's up to me to do things that could prolong my life. That is my understanding, Prabhuji, because what you were explaining about the lifespan of Lord Brahma, yeah, that is there. But I think when the scriptures talk about the very day we were born, our date of passing was also stipulated, is referring to our particular immediate birth and not our opportune time allotted to us to see when early we can leave this material plane, which is the 300 and something billion, 400 billion of Lord Brahma's time.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to explain is that he's talking about destiny.
Yeah.
So there is a universal destiny for all living entities. And so that you cannot extend it. The whole universal creation depends on the breathing of Lord Mahavishnu. So when he breathes in, annihilation takes place. When he breathes out, creation takes place. And there is a rhythm, there is a period of time for him to breathe in and a period of time for him to breathe out. So that is the rhythm of creation and destruction. So that is universal time scale.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes down to the living entity, the individual living entity in a particular body, it is once you are born, there is a time for you to live. There's a date of birth, there's a date of death. But there are also some methods and processes that if one knows those processes and methods, he could possibly expand his life. Even though somebody is born to live 100 years, but if you know some processes, whether they are cultural practices, spiritual practices, yogic practices, one could actually expand his life to a certain degree. That is also there, but that is relative because it relates to a particular body at a particular time. So that is possible. But what I'm saying is that the universal time, the manifestation of the universe and the withdrawal of the universe, there is a time scale for it. And so that time cannot be changed. That destiny is already there. That we have to live for a certain number of years, and then we are withdrawn from the universe because the whole universe is withdrawn. And then we have to stay in Mahavishnu's belly for a certain period of time. Then again, it is brought back. So that is where I said we cannot change things. We cannot expand or decrease so long as we're in the universe. But individually, when you have an individual body, individual life, that is subject to change. You can expand it, you can decrease it. If you do certain things, it will reduce your lifespan. If you do certain things, it will increase your lifespan. If you know some yogic processes, breathing exercises, you can expand your life. So those things are there. But the universal time scale takes everybody off. As soon as it's time for annihilation, whether you are a great yogi, whether you are what, so long as you have not attained perfection, everyone is withdrawn. So that is what I was trying to explain.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I
think we've gone really.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Okay, Salika Prabhu, go ahead.
Okay, let me allow Kavi to answer. Maybe he's wanting to, because
Okay,
I want to
Kavi.
ask another question. But
I think we should be thinking of rounding up.
Yeah, so I came from one 2-hour lecture before I came here.
Yeah,
Wow.
we've kept Prabhu here for longer.
Another 2 hours. I've been talking for 4 hours now.
Yeah.
Sorry, Maharaj. Please forgive
Hare
us
Krishna.
because we don't
No
get
problem.
invitation every time. So once in a while, when we get it, we want to maximize
Hare
it.
Krishna. You ask
So
your
Maharaj,
question.
my question is, because when you were answering Salika Prabhu's question, you mentioned about destiny.
Yeah.
So now brought this thing to my mind about the collective destiny.
Yeah.
How does collective destiny works? Because let me use Nigeria as a case study.
And that's right.
Nigeria is a very wealthy country, but because of
Bad leadership.
bad leadership and misappropriation of funds,
Yeah.
many of the citizens are suffering. And now all the youths, they are waking up now. They say they want to take their destiny by their hand. They are mentioning that. And they want to vote a particular person that they think that will change their destiny. So when they are saying that thing, it's connecting, and I'm thinking very deep about it. How does it work, a collective destiny that will either enrich a particular generation or impoverish them? How does it work, collective destiny? Because that also affects spiritual organization also. If the leadership has no vision, the organization is going nowhere. If the leadership has vision, then maybe, I don't know, but please, Maharaj, please, if you can throw more light on this, thank you.
Well, collective destiny is there, that's for sure. The living entities in this universe, we have a collective destiny. The living entities on a particular planet has a collective destiny. The living entities in a particular continent, they have a common destiny. The living entities in a country, they have some common destiny. The living entities in a village, in a family, they have some destiny. That is their collective destiny is there. So, and it's not by chance that we have taken birth in a particular community. It's not by chance we have taken birth in a particular environment. It is due to that collective destiny that we are taking birth in a particular place so that we can share in that collective destiny. But it is also possible that collectively you can make a change. It is also possible. If the destiny of a particular nation, the destiny of a particular nation can change if all the citizens or majority of the citizens come to a certain realization and they work towards it. So even though we have these universal collective destinies, but there are also micro destinies, planetary, continental, national, village, community, family, they're all there. And so these smaller destinies can be changed by a collective effort. But the universal destiny, which is talked about as Daiva, is just talking about the desire of the living entity, the desire to exploit material nature, the desire to enjoy material nature. That is the destiny we are talking about here. But when it comes down to the national level or community level, then it becomes a more detailed activity. And so in that detailed activity, if the constituents, the members of that community, if they want an improved situation and they come together, they can have an effect on the national destiny or the community destiny. And we are seeing these things happen in Europe, in different places. History tells us how one person led a whole nation through certain actions into a better situation for them. So that national destiny, community destiny, family destiny, and individual destiny, they are there and they can be changed. But the universal destiny of the living entity and the universal swabhava nature, inclination of the living entity, they are almost like fixed, because time is the time limit is there, the desire is there, the inclination is there. That is what is with a conditioned soul. But when it trickles down to the family level, community level, national level, or continental level, or even planetary level, it can be changed if all the citizens or the inhabitants of the planet or the continent, if they come together and decide to make a change in their destiny, it is possible. That opportunity is there, it can be done. Otherwise, how is it that there are revolutions and those revolutions produce results? So it means that those destinies, continental, national, community, tribal, family, they can be changed if everyone feels the need to have a change and they all act together in a positive way. It can be changed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Sahadev, I don't know. I know the time is gone. Prabhu wants to go also. Actually, he has hit on the second question I wanted to ask, because when he gave the answer to my question, actually what was arising in my mind is what he has hinted upon, but I really have not gotten what I really wanted to get from there, because when he talked about the universal destiny and individual destiny, then my mind starts ruminating about desire, how desire creates our destiny. Bhagavad Gita also 7:26 also says that Isha Dvesha Samutinam, that a living entity coming into the existence due to desire and hate. And so I was looking at that answer, that the universal destiny, within the universal destiny, living entity can increase his life. And I'm looking at how my desire now affect the destiny, how my desire can change, because if it is just by me, okay, when Prabhu was given an answer initially, he talked about speculation that some particular personality was increasing his life. It is in every tradition we hear that some man or some woman is using the life of another living entity, whether tree or human being or goat or whatever. So now, if I have a destiny to live for 10 years, and by my desire, I decide to live for 100 years. So my desire has affected the living entities living inside of me. or maybe Lord Brahma desire to live beyond or any particular living entity at any particular level. That's why I was saying that. Do we now say that? That's what I was trying to clarify that. Do we say that that destiny at different levels can be changed, and only it cannot be exceeded? It cannot exceed the 311 trillion 40 billion years. So, but then, if within that 311 trillion 40 billion years, if I so desire to extend or decrease my life in a particular way, and that desire, by such desire, I'm able to achieve that and cause a destruction of the destiny of another living entity, then how do we correlate that when we say that no blade of grass moves without the sanctioning of Krishna, because that person wasn't destined to die or live according to my own desire, but my desire now has caused his death or to live. So how do we reconcile that?
Thank you. I think we'll take this as a last question.
Yes.
It's almost getting to 6 o'clock.
Yes, it must be.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
No, Prabhu, I think you might have to go for a break. You might have to go for a break and come back.
No.
Anyway, we'll take one question from you if you have any questions. Anyway. We'll take one question from you. So
Thank
that
you for
once
compassion.
you come on the scene, we will give you a chance. So for Salika Prabhu's question, it is it is true that if we have to extend our lives at the cost of any other living entity, then we have some debt to pay, because we cannot deprive someone else of his lifespan in order to expand our lifespan, and we will go scot-free. No. Unless it is a process which does not involve lives, like the case of this pranayama. In pranayama, if you learn how to do your breathing exercises, and you can hold your breath and you don't waste your breath, you regulate your breath, yes, you can expand your life without disturbing any living entity. But in our traditional system, whereby they exchange their death with some trees, with some human beings, with some animals, and those living entities have to die, you are creating a reaction which you have to deal with. So you cannot extend your life at the cost of other living entities and go scot-free. You have to pay for it. So your destiny, you have your destiny, but when your destiny affects others, especially in a negative way, if your destiny affects others in a positive way, that is a credit for you. But when it affects others in a negative way, then you have to pay. You have to account for that. So within the universal time scale, we can exceed it. But in our individual time scale, we can either decrease or increase. But it must be done without creating any havoc for another living being. If we do that, then there is a reaction that awaits us, either in this life or some other life. But we have to pay. We can escape it. That is what I will say. So Hari Chakra Prabhu, what's your question before we drop the curtains?
I don't think he has a question.
just finish. Yeah, I think. Thank you.
Why do you want to deprive me?
I'm sorry. Well, you are privileged to ask your question if you do. If you do have
Yeah,
one.
Prabhu, thank you very much, Prabhu. You know, this class like this, anytime you come on like this, then we want to just hear, continue hearing. Maybe we should arrange like that. Maybe anytime you have to come, we have to arrange it so that you can go on a break and come back. We continue to hear.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah. So my question is I mean, you there's something you explained that it has never occurred to me before, that about this the universal destiny, like the one about Lord Mahavishnu thing, and the individual destinies that can be changed. Yeah, because I was deliberating about how they say the material world is controlled by these 5 things. What are they? Sometimes it escapes me. The Purusha, the Jiva, karma, time, and what? And Prakriti.
Yeah,
and it is said that 4 of them, they are permanent. They can never be changed. They can never be affected.
Yeah.
But 1, that is karma, can be changed.
Yes.
So okay. So this thing you have been explaining, that does that mean because karma can be changed, that's why some people can use some means or with some desire in a particular way to affect their karma. That if their karma says they are supposed to be here for 50 years, then they can perform some act, and then instead of the 50 years, they get extension to like 60 or 100, or they can perform some abominable act which can reduce their lifespan. So is it because karma can be changed? That's why those manipulations can be there?
Exactly. Because karma is not permanent. The other factors are permanent, but karma is can be changed. So because of that, if we can, by our activities, we can increase our lifespan, and we can also decrease our lifespan. Just as Sadhya Prabhu mentioned, when the Kauravas, they maltreated Draupadi, it is said that decreased their lifespan. And so there are actions that we perform that can increase our lifespan, and there are actions that we perform that can decrease our lifespan. And that corroborates the fact that karma is changeable. You can change karma.
Does that also explain that, like, some people are gathered in a car to have an accident, but there is some exalted personality or somebody with a huge positive karma comes into the car, and somehow or the other, his karmic power affects all the others, so that the accident cannot come on, or the accident is like shifted.
Minimize. Yes, it's also true. Yes, it's also true. There are certain accidents that should have claimed so many lives, but because of the piety of certain people in the vehicle, the impact is reduced. So all of these are universal principles that we are not even aware of, but they are happening. Sometimes we are in the association of some people, and because of that association, we are protected. That is a fact. So it's true.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. But think about my proposal. Maybe we should.
Yes, actually, I think we have to put it into serious deliberation, because my heart is still yearning for many questions, but then we'll have to allow from
including me also. Because when we say that pranayama increases life, it means that doing exercise will reduce the life.
When is that?
When we say pranayama increases life by controlling your breath, it means that by doing exercise, when we breathe faster, we are wasting our breath, and the life will reduce.
Well, I've heard something like that, that people, there are certain activities that increase your breath. So those activities that increase your breath reduces your life. But when you do sports, in sports, you don't, it may seem that you are breathing very fast, but sports actually regulates your breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think back, because somebody said, then sportsmen should die very young. I said, no. In sports, if you go for training, the sports teacher trains them to breathe less. I remember I was trying to run cross country for my house in the secondary school. And our sports master used to tell us that if you breathe very often, you cannot make it. It says you should hold your breath. And maybe every 5 minutes you should breathe. He said if you can hold your breath, you can go a longer distance because that breath is taking your energy. So there are certain activities that actually may seem to be taking your breath, but actually it is prolonging your breath. And there are certain activities that may seem not to be taking your breath, but actually is consuming your breath. So it's a question of knowing what is useful in regulating your breath, and also knowing what consumes your breath. You need to know this. And the science of pranayama, all these things are spelled out.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't do pranayama. We are not Ashtanga yogis, but in Patanjali's yoga system, all the details are given, what a yogi should do and what he should not do in order to control his breath.
Yeah.
So I think we'll end this question here.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. We can't thank you enough for Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
SRIVAS, VANACARI.
So thank you all, dear devotees. By Guru Krishna's grace, we'll be here again tomorrow. Thank you for the wonderful questions and their time.
Professor Sahadev, thank you very much. And Associate Professor Salika, thank you very much.
And I'm also suggesting that maybe sometime Sahadev, whilst the class is going on, he should give me a co-host so that I can also check him. He cannot deprive me. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Krishna.